Hello, Greg.
Good morning, Mimi. Congratulations.
Thank you.
HB 281.
Yeah, I got the number right the second time around. I was too excited the first time. I was like yelling the wrong number.
That's so exciting.
Yes. I mean, it's kind of like a anticlimactic because now it's like the real work begins where, Florida goes, no, we don't want this, but
sure. But now they have to go on record as to saying no.
Exactly. No, it's a big deal. And I feel like it would be pretty tone deaf. Not that Florida hasn't shown its and proven itself to step up to being tone deaf, but I feel like we have a chance, we have a chance.
do we want just for the sake of indulging the
audience
radical idea that there may be people listening to this who have no idea what the hell we're talking about.
Exactly. Yes.
You can explain to them what HB 281
I can. See, you're the better co-host here than I am. I'm just like jumping right in. But yes, so most of our listeners, I think know, but if not, because we may have some new ones after last week's Spencer Ackerman. But I'm working on an inclusion bill for AAPI history in Florida's K-12 education. And since May, which was Asian and American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, I thought this is a great idea. And it's a great idea. It just wasn't a great idea for me to do it because it's been so much work. But thanks to Representative Anna Eskamani, and we got a co-sponsor on the Senate side, Senator Linda Stewart, we have written a bill and it's there, and it's SB 281 HB 490, and the bill is there. And now we need to get co-sponsors and do the whole like Schoolhouse Rock, how a bill becomes a law thing.
Very good. And
yes.
now you should in the show notes link to I Am Just a Bill.
Yeah.
Written by Dave Frischberg, I believe.
So. Oh wow, of course you know that. Cool. Yeah, it's super exciting because it's something that's just like that's happening, but until it actually happens and then you see it on the official page, it is actually honestly very exciting because this is the first time I've done anything like that.
Okay, so look, I mean, I think that this is important in a number of ways, all right, because this is the first time you have done anything like this.
Yes.
But you did it. You were motivated to do this. You figured out how to do it. You sought out ways to do it. And yeah, it's not a law yet, right? But when we talk about advocacy and we talk about affecting change, do not, I mean, there are so many things to take from this, but the first is, look, that's this is a teaching moment about the power, of what one person can do. And what activism can bring about. Because look, even if you don't find the co-sponsors, even if it doesn't become law, you have now moved this into a live forum of debate. Right? And we spend so much time when you and I talk trying to fight off the despair gremlins. And there's a lot of, there's the despair gremlins are never, ever going to go hungry. But this is a remarkable thing. This is a thing to be proud of. This is a thing, this is a great leading by example thing.
Thank you.
And yeah, just don't undersell it for yourself, but also, I mean, for anybody who's listening, think about what we're talking about. If your voice matters. Your voice matters. So, all right, there we go. That was our serious bit. Now let's talk comedy jokes. Yes.
All right. That's what you and I are known for. I really love in the Discord because this last episode that you and I talked about, like nuts and jerky and snacks and things. And people apparently like really loved it. But one thing that I thought was absolutely adorable was the term, "Oh, I really love your podcast," but especially when it's the Mimi and Greg special. And I was like, oh, that sounds like an order, like a meal.
There you go. Yeah. We would like, would you like nuggets with that? You know?
Obviously, it's sugar-free beef jerky in our meal.
No, I mean,
obviously.
Yeah.
And now
for those
whenever
of us fighting diabetes, so.
or that just don't want like fructose corn
Sugar?
syrup things in
Yeah.
our food. Yes. I mean, so now every time I make my jerky, I think about you. Like it's like,
Okay.
oh, I should be sending
Greg
Greg some of this. Yes.
Vacuum pack. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
basically. That may be coming your way, actually. But
Oh, well, that's fine because I still haven't gone through all the tea you sent me. And
I'm very
drinking
big on
some
edible
now.
and drinkable things because I mean, you can't really go wrong. You can't go wrong.
As an aside, and this is yet another reason why capitalism is fucking out of control. And oh, hey, look, we just earned the explicit tag for this week. I was, I'm settling in at the computer, getting ready for this, and I'm checking my mail, and I am on, of course, like we all are, mailing lists from places that I made the mistake of ordering something from. And I literally, one of the emails was a photograph of the cargo ship backup outside the port of Long Beach. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd gone in and they put little tags saying, this item on this boat and this item on the, as a joke. Right.
Okay.
But the banner was order your holiday stuff early because of supply. It's like, oh man. I mean, on some level I go, okay, that's cute. And it's a little bit on the witty side.
Right.
And on the other side of it, it's like, guys, do you not see how I don't need this widget. Like you're literally telling me I need to order a new case for my iPhone now because of supply chain issues. It's like that's not the priority item. I hate to break it to you, it's just, yeah.
We've been getting that a lot too. People saying, oh, you got to start your Christmas shopping early. I'm like, no gifts this year. How about that?
Yeah.
How about we just have a nice conversation, share a little love?
You know what? I will happily make a donation in your name to, RAIN or Free the Slaves or, let's go down the line. Oh, say, anybody providing abortion support services and access in Texas.
Yes, that's just that's a good one.
Something that will, do anything of merit with the Supreme Court.
Yes, so many things that we could be taking that Christmas what do they call it, Black Friday funds and pushing towards there.
I mean, now we're gonna, again, this is one of those ones where we're just gonna, I know you have notes and I'm just gonna digress. You're never gonna get to them. So yesterday was Jennifer's birthday. And
how did I not know that? Happy birthday.
Because I didn't advertise it. And we have been married for quite a while. And we are now in our 50s, and I am faced with, and there's my bride does not want, the joke was, I was saying to her, like I don't have a pearl necklace recovered from the depths of the Atlantic. And she would just, whenever I say something like that, she just looks at me and blinks like I want that. I don't want that. And she got, I got her a stuffed animal. That was my birthday present for her, because we are now of an age where either, like when we were in our 20s, there was always stuff that you wanted.
Yes, and needed too.
Right.
Yeah.
Because, well, and those were two different things, right? There was stuff you needed and there was stuff you wanted. So you could always,
which are good for gifts, right?
Right. Yeah. And now we're in our 50s and the kids are out of the house. And it's like, what do we need? Nothing that we can give each other right? And what do we want? Nothing that we can give each other. I mean, so it's a weird place to be, in sort of this odd gift. I just, it really was crystallized for me yesterday that we're in this weird gift giving limbo.
What kind of stuffed animal was it?
It was from the Discworld Emporium. It was a stuffed Grebo cat.
Oh, okay.
So if you're a Discworld fan, the joke around the house as far as that goes is that see, one of the best gifts I ever got her was also from the Discworld Emporium, which is a little sterling silver necklace that has Granny Weatherwax's handwritten sign, "I taint dead," on it, and she loves it. And the irony there is that of the two of us, she sees herself as Nanny Og, and she sees me as Granny Weatherwax. And if you are a Discworld fan, that will tell you everything you need to know about the relationship. Grebo is Og's evil tomcat. And in the novels is described as like the father of almost every cat in the kingdom of Lancre, and is missing an eye and is scarred. He's just literally he is the kind of cat that wolves are afraid of. And yet this stuffed Grebo, is this big, and of course he's cute as hell and soft and plush and scarred. Right. So she got that, and she got a knitting project from friends in Australia. Nice. And she was very happy.
Yes. So, yes. No, yeah. I mean, I am not quite there, but Oscar and I are the same way. Like literally we were in New York, as you know, for a business trip, but we were like, oh, we're going to see family, but then we're coming from epicenter of Delta. So we thought, you know what, if no one's comfortable, we'll just go off to the Catskills and do our own thing. And we're like, oh yeah, we'll make this our wedding anniversary thing, because we don't need to buy each other stuff. Like this is already like an expense we didn't expect to have. And then we had some alone time together in the woods. And it was like a writing retreat place in which we did no writing because of course I brought my laptop with like full intent and stuff. But it was funny because we're both like, he's a Brooklyn boy and I'm city girl. And so we loved it. We're like, oh, it's so quiet. We have this beautiful quote unquote cabin. It was really a boutique hotel cabin. So I think real hikers like laugh at us because you can turn the fireplace on by the light switch. So I saw you chopping wood in your IG and I was like, oh, is that what that's for? So yeah, and then like after day one of all this like silence, we're like, man, we can't wait to get back to the city. But this actually is a perfect seg into what I wanted to talk to you about. Because
all right, yes, segue away.
Oscar and I we've been milling this idea for years that the two of us are going to write something together, whether it's Kung Fu instructional with his strength side and my, something probably nonfiction. But a lot of people also pressure me all the time to write down all of the short stories about my dad and all these things. I'm like, there was a movie, right?
Yeah.
But there's all these like, he's just such an interesting person and there is a lot to catalog. And so,
right. And I'm sure that's even more in mind right now because his birthday.
Exactly. It's his birthday. It just passed. And yeah, so I was like, oh, we'll go to our little writing retreat. And Oscar's like, oh, you need to read Bird by Bird. And ironically, it was like quoted in Ted Lasso a few episodes ago as well. And we thought that was so funny because we had both read this book, Bird by Bird. So I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
I don't know it.
So it is by, and of course I'm going to fail here, but
bring up the notes.
Yes, bring up the notes. It's
Quick
by
Google.
Yes, it's I have the book open actually because I have some things to ask you about it. But it's by Anne Lamott. And yes. So it's very hilarious. It was very short, it's fun. And I guess she's also a writing teacher. And so I audiobooked it.
A very well known she is for real.
Yes. So her book was great. I enjoyed it for a, non-writer author person, especially like kind of looking to perhaps do something one day. I don't know if that's any day soon, but anyway, I read it and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to get the digital copy so I can take notes and ask Greg about such things, because because one is she's hilarious, you know, she just has all these like fun things. She's very intentional, but also it did make you go, oh man, I need to start writing right now. And I was like, wow, that's a pretty good book when it kind of motivates you to do what the book says you should be doing. But there are things in it that it was just interesting to me. And I thought, oh, I can talk to this one writer that I know quite well and who's kind of amazing. And I know a lot of our listeners love hearing you talk about process and stuff too. But this is kind of fun because,
we're going to have a process conversation.
Well, not process, but you know, there were things in the book that I thought was really interesting. So
no, I actually don't mind. I don't talk about process a lot.
So one we'll start real mild and easy, but one of the things that it was like a big like a whole chapter on was index cards. And so she says she just carries one around in her pocket all the time so that she can always write down an idea, because you'll be in the shower and you have an idea and you'll say, oh, I'll write that down later.
You can't really have that in your pocket.
Yeah, exactly. And so you know, even mid podcast, it made me want to stop and take notes. So that concept's interesting because I know we all have our phones now and there's voice memo and there's all these things. But I was curious, as a seasoned and writer of many mediums, what kind of like way do you grab ideas and store them for yourself, or do you do that?
Okay, so the blanket caveat here is that everybody finds what works for them. And that may have been the most important writing lesson I ever got. I think I mentioned before, I had this wonderful professor back at Vassar my senior year named Frank Burgon, who is a wonderful writer. And in this fiction seminar I was in, I will retell this story. I'm sure I've told it before, but there were 13, 14 students in it. And every so often he would have somebody in sort of the Dutchess County area, or like the visiting writer in residence, somebody would come in and speak to the class. And so we had short story writers and novelists and poets and so on speak to us. And after like the fourth or fifth one of these, one of the students in the class, I remember saying very specifically to Professor Burgon, so I've come to the conclusion that none of them know what they're talking about. That they all say different things, that nobody knows, that none of this is correct. And Burgon's response was perhaps, or perhaps they're all right. Right. And so you ask how I do it, you know, and I'm going to say, look, here are 2 notebooks that are unopened. I collect notebooks. All right. Like literally sitting here at my desk, just at my desk with the laptop, there's one notepad, one huge lectern notebook, unused, right? Not open, a smaller A7, a large Moleskine, a small in portfolio, sort of mid-sized one with pencil loop, these 2 unopened. That's what, 5? And that's just like looking. No, wait, I missed one. 6, 7. So
you do not need a notebook for Christmas. Got it.
I do not. 7. And let's not.
That's even, just at your desk.
That's just at my desk. That's not even opening drawers. All right.
Yes.
So what can you gather from that? You can gather incorrectly that Greg fills notebooks. Or you can gather more correctly, if you know me, that Greg collects notebooks in the hopes of filling them. I use whatever is handy if I feel moved to write down something. There's a Stephen King quote in one of his, I don't know if it was in Dance Macabre or in On Writing, or but
on Writing.
He talks about the fact that, and interestingly enough, Bendis has said something similar, right? which is that though Bendis's take is a little different. But if I remember correctly, the king one is, well, if it's a good idea, you don't need to write it down. Mm-hmm. And I don't actually think that's true. That's true for him. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Bendis used to say, I don't know if he still believes this, but he used to say, well, if you're talking about the story, that means you don't want to write it. And that's 100% false in my case.
Right.
Like that is absolutely demonstrably untrue for me. Maybe true for him. Like if he is talking about the thing he wants to write, then he doesn't actually want to write it. Mm-hmm. That for Brian, the way that he explores the thing is by doing the writing.
Right.
For me, I need to talk about it. I'm a big talking cure guy. And it's funny, you know, listening to the podcast you did with Spencer Ackerman, I was kind of delighted to hear his little tidbit about process when he was talking about, you know, reading aloud what he had written, because that's not something I tend to associate with writing nonfiction. I absolutely associate it with fiction.
Right.
When I'm writing a novel, I read aloud because I want to make sure that I got it right. Like, did it hit the ear right? Is the cadence right? And of course, it's just as valid in nonfiction. It's going to be just as valid in any form you use. So there are times when I take notes. There are times when I will record quote unquote inspiration or ideas. And there are times when I don't. Mm-hmm. There are times when I will trust that it will stick in my head. I find more often than not, when I'm actually in process, meaning I'm sitting here and I'm working and I'm struggling with something, what happens is the ideas move. I don't want this to sound like I'm super smart and my brain works so fast. That's not what I'm saying. It's that the ideas or the thing that I am chasing, there's so much, it's like going through a deck of infinite cards and looking and discarding and looking and discarding and looking and the problem there is that sometimes I will move something that has merit into a discard pile because I'm chasing this other thing, and then we'll have lost the thing that I knew had merit. So, you know, I'm working on a script right now that I literally have to have like 3 windows open. Well, I'm like the window that I'm composing in, and then on another monitor, a separate program open that is just me writing sequences of dialogue that will never get used. It is in. I mean, it's so. You know, I said this before. I'm going to say it again. It is what works for you. This is one of the reasons why I get very suspicious of people who say this is the method to write.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can teach you how to write. I can teach you how to write better, right? I can look at your writing and I can say, these are the problems I am seeing. These are the ways you can consider addressing them. But the actual raw creative process is so alchemical, sort of mystical to me.
Yeah.
That, you know, different writers do it in different ways. I surround myself with spell components, if we're going to talk about it that way. And those spell components may be, you know, 7 notebooks and a pencil pouch that, you know, I've owned this for 3 years. How many times have I opened it? If you can look at this leather pouch, and it's a beautiful little leather pouch, it's still nightmarishly difficult to open.
Yeah, there doesn't look like too many creases in it.
Right, that's exactly it. And the reason why is it holds a series of colored pens. It holds the series of colored pens because I was trying to emulate a method of composition that I saw Matt Fraction using. And guess what? Doesn't work for me.
Of course. Yeah. As
And
everybody's
so,
different.
yeah, doesn't work for me. So
But
I have a beautiful pen holder.
it is beautiful. You
that I don't
have a
use.
lot of things, but maybe all of that's there for like inspiration, and it just kind of adds to the atmosphere. You definitely look like you have a writer's room.
Yeah, I mean, this is the space and it's funny because for all that I love my office, I hate my office and always have. I think the space you write in is very important.
Yeah. Okay.
And I don't know if it's the feng shui of this room or not. I have never been comfortable in this office writing. There is no way to situate myself in it and I have moved this desk around over the years and so on, that has ever made me feel entirely comfortable in here. And I don't know why.
Wow. So you need to be uncomfortable in order to write all these brilliant things that you write. Apparently.
No.
What happens when you get comfortable? That's what that'd be
probably I go to sleep. I don't know.
Oh my goodness. That's so interesting.
Yeah, I can't explain it. I have had offices that I have worked in that have been terrific, and I can't precisely describe to you what works and what doesn't in the space. This office works better for me when, as it is right now, my door is closed. I find that concentration and the ability to focus is the most important thing when I'm actually doing the writing. So limiting the distractions is huge.
Yeah.
There was a period where I would come into this office, and I think you've been in here. If my memory is, I think I showed it to you when you were at the house, right?
I don't know if I actually went downstairs, but you're like, that's my office. And
yeah, I'm in the basement, and there was a period where I would come in here and I would just turn off the lights and close the door. So it'd literally be in the dark, only lit by monitors.
Okay.
Which I stopped doing because that's creepy.
I don't know. I always think, is it not good for your eyesight? Is what I would be worried about.
Probably not. Though, my eyes have been shot for years now. So, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, my response is always going to be, you have to find what works for you.
Of course.
And you have to be willing to change it. Because there are times when the thing that worked last time won't work this time. It's just not working.
Yeah, it's like an evolving, changing,
and
living thing,
I have tried. I mean, I have tried nearly every method, one can think of. I've done note cards, I've done outlines, I've written long form synopsis, I've worked by hand, I type, I will do mind maps. The only thing I really haven't ever done is dictation.
Okay.
And I don't know why. I grew up with a lot of dictation. My dad, who was dyslexic, and also a workers' comp personal injury attorney, would sit in the office in our home and dictate on his dictaphone.
Okay.
So I mean, I know how that's supposed to work. So yeah.
Interesting. So another thing that jumped out that makes complete sense, but I think is something like a beginner or first time writer would be scared to do, is it's just like getting started and having that shitty first draft. And she was like, all good writers write them. That seemed like a pretty absolute in what she said. No, it's all good writers write shitty first drafts. So don't be afraid to do it.
Anybody, I genuinely believe anyone who says is I just sat down and that was it. And they're full of shit. They are lying. They are lying. The secret, the dirty secret is this. This is the thing that I honestly think there are certain things that that are sort of the Rubicon crossing moments. And I think they're in almost any profession, right? There's a passion. And you've talked about it actually, right? That moment when, or that period of time when all the Kung Fu you had been doing that you hated having to do turned into the thing where you were like, no, I see the result of the effort. And I also see how much harder I'm going to have to work to get there. And I'm willing to do it. It's the difference between, it's the difference between when you are in high school and you're writing your stories and you're just having fun and you're loving it. And then going, oh, I need to revise it. Right. And it's the level up stage. There is a level up stage and everybody hits it. And maybe that's the way to look at it. It is not a stage, but a step. It is like literally a set of stairs.
Yeah.
And I have seen and have known so many people who earnestly want to write for a living and who you can't do this for them, who just don't understand that they have to take the next step. That there are so many writers I have known, and I'm thinking of one in particular right now, who, will sit down and every day churn out 3,000 words and will figure out the thing that they want to write, and they've figured out the plot of it and they'll do the research, but they don't actually ever get in there and look at the craft and go, how do I, and the result is every time something gets hard, they go easy.
Okay.
There is a level of competency, and I'm sure you can apply this, for instance, to Kung Fu.
Yeah.
There's a level of competency where okay, to perform this thing properly, I cannot physically do it yet, but I can cheat it, right? I can fake it. I can go over here and it'll look almost the same. I can avoid this. It's a tricky piece of music in the instrumentation. So what I'll do is I'll dodge it by doing this instead. And that choice is the choice where you fail. The moment when you look at it and you go like, this is too hard for me. And instead of running away from it, the acceptance of, so I got to go through it. I got to get better. I got to challenge myself. And I have to accept that I'm going to fail. Is to me the make or break moment. All other things about success aside, which we can come back to, the make or break moment is that moment where you go like, I don't know how to do this. I'm gonna have to try and screw it up and keep screwing it up. And that willingness to engage and to fail is genuinely, to me, the litmus test, right? Because all the other stuff about success and so on, that's all outside of your control. It literally is. All you can ever do is control your commitment to the work and your commitment to honing your craft, whatever that craft may be. But you cannot control if the agent has had a good day the day you submit your work to them. If the editor just lost, their dog or their favorite plant or a child, right? You cannot control if the novel you wrote that began with a terrorist incident in London comes out 3 weeks after a terrorist incident in London that is almost verbatim what you described in your book.
Right.
You cannot control these things. You just can't.
Yeah.
And thus, at the end of the day, it again, it defaults to you. It defaults to the thing you can control. You can put your ass in the chair and do the work.
Yeah.
And determine how hard you are willing to work.
Yeah, that's perfect, because there's one part of the book that really stood out for me the most. And it reminded me a lot of how you've described writing to me, and what you're describing now. And she talks about, you're going to have to give and give and give, or there's no reason for you to be writing. And it's like from the deepest part of yourself, and you're going to have to go on giving and giving, and that is going to have to be its own reward. And so that's why you don't think about, oh, I'm going to have this published book. But then and you'll listeners, just bear with me, because then she explains this giving story, true story, right? By Jack Cornfield, who's of the Spirit Rock Meditation Center, who I actually happen to have followed and listened to some of his meditation and heard him on podcasts. So I was like super excited. You know, it makes me feel like, wow, I know something when I can where I can get the references in books. But basically, it's an 8-year-old boy, had a sister who was dying of leukemia, and he was told that without a blood transfusion, she would die. And his parents explained to him his blood was probably compatible with hers, and if so, he could be the donor. And they asked him, could they test his blood? And he said, sure. And then he was a match. And then they said, they would give his sister a pint of blood, and that would be the only way that she would have a chance of living. And he said he would have to think about it overnight. And so then the next day he went to his parents and said he was willing to donate the blood. And so they took him to the hospital. They put him on the gurney beside his sister. They both got hooked up to IV. The nurse took the blood and then gave it, to the girl. And the boy was laying there in silence while the blood was being, dripped into his sister. Then the doctor finally came over to check on them and see how he was doing. And the boy opened his eyes and he said, how soon until I start to die?
Yeah. When
And
do I
so
start? When do I start dying?
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just such a great story to really show, like, okay, this is because at first when you hear it, you're like, oh, he had to think about saving his sister or whatever. And then it's just like, that's how much you have to give, right? Like, be just willing to kind of go all the way with that. And I just thought, one, it was a beautiful story, but two, it really paints such a clear picture. So
I mean, look, my far more crass analogy that I've used for years and years is that if you're really writing for, and I would argue this probably works across the board, certainly in the case of fiction. You are, and this is one of the reasons why I don't do long form prose anymore. It is akin to the stripping naked in the town square and covering your genitals in fluorescent paint and saying, what do y'all think? It is a remarkably raw process. You have to be willing to, because good writing is true. That's not the same as factual.
correct. Yeah.
It's true. And if you are writing truth, you are vulnerable. And if you're writing truth to put in front of others, you are exposing that vulnerability. You are, you are revealing yourself. And it's scary and painful. It isn't easy. And it's all, and like I say, this is the difference between those who do and those who want to, because most of us come to writing fiction, at least, because it's fun. We have fun telling our stories. And then at a certain, on a certain day, at a certain time, you go like, oh, if I want this to really be for real, I'm going to have to do the hard part now. It's the difference between I was doing it for fun and now it's a job. Now it's work. Now it's work. And there are people who just do, they will never, ever be able to do that. They just, and either because they don't get it or because they don't want to, or because they can't. And that's not that, I mean, that is not disparaging to those people. It's just, you know, there are things I cannot do, but the one thing, you know, I can do is write. Maybe the only thing I can do.
That's not true, but
no, I mean,
it's something you do extraordinarily well.
It may be the only thing I do of merit.
Not true either.
But I'm not, like I say, it's not easy. It's not easy. And that hump of going, okay, we have gone from the part where it was fun to the part where it's not fun anymore. You know, the great Douglas Adams line is, I hate, you know, I don't like writing, I like having written. You know, I mean,
I feel like I would feel that way.
Yeah, I mean, there's a legitimacy to that. It's like, yeah, the process, there are days, man, it stinks. I am 4 months in on a script that is just, it hates me.
Oh,
I mean, this script literally gets up every morning. You know, I open my eyes and it's sitting on my chest like, you know, a devil in a Hieronymus Bosch painting with his pitchfork going, ha ha, motherfucker. I got you again.
Out to get you.
Yeah. And it's like, you're never getting rid of me. I want nothing more than this script to be done. I want nothing more than this script to be done. 4 months, Mimi.
Wow. That is,
and it is nothing but like, you are just trying to kill me, aren't you? And I have stepped back. And so, by the way, I just saw another notebook. I missed one in the count. That's
they're in camouflage on your desk.
I mean,
There's
seriously,
so many.
well, this one,
that one crept out and said, thanks a lot. You didn't give me any credit.
This one's a little tiny. Yeah. See, this one's a pocket one. This one is quite literally a
like an index card. Yeah, there you go. That's your pocket.
So,
notebook.
Yeah, I have tried every tactic I know on this thing, and what I've come to realize now in talking to you is that, and what every one of those tactics has been, is me trying to go around it instead of having to go through it.
Well, I'm glad I could be helpful in this session too.
Well, but you see, this goes back to what I was saying, right? Which is, for me, it's a talking cure.
Yeah.
For me, there are times when I absolutely have to talk to somebody about the thing I'm working on. There are times when I don't. It's fine. It's in my head. There are times when I have to, you know, look at Jen and say, you got a couple of minutes? I just got to run something past you. And sometimes Jen will sit there and be like, okay, did that help? Or do you need me to say something now? Right? Did you need to just say it aloud?
What a great listener.
Well, yeah, but we've been married for 30 plus years.
Right.
So she's figured it out.
She kind of knows you by now. She knows your process.
Yeah. So
I guess that's also why you enjoy comics, because you usually have a collaborator and you're going back and forth and you're talking it out, and there's a lot.
I have never had in prose a really good editor, ironically, for my own stuff. Like, the best editor I've ever had in prose was Mike Seglain when I was doing the Star Wars stuff.
Okay.
But the editors I have had consistently at quote unquote major publishers, who all were, I am sure, quite talented and have long lines of success behind them, never engaged me. They never wanted to talk to me. And for the longest time, I thought that was normal.
Okay.
And it wasn't until very late into my prose career where I realized, oh no, that's them. They didn't want to know me. And that's a problem for me.
Yeah.
That's not how I work. But, you know, I mean, it's funny when we talk, I have come to realize that I actually got published too young. I mean, it was what I needed then in my life. It changed my life. But if I had had a better sense of myself and my own advocacy for myself and what I needed, I suspect my novel writing career would look very different. But I was very young. I was, I think, 23 when Keeper sold, and we were desperately poor. And if they had said, so what we need you to do now is shave off all your hair and wear a skunk costume and run around the Bantam Doubleday Dell building and on Broadway 8 times, I would have been like, okay, yeah, if I guess that's what you need, I'll do it. You know, how does this help the book? Just trust us. Okay. You know, yeah. I was not self-aware enough or sure of myself enough to be able to look my editor in the eye and say, disagree.
Yeah. And that's unfortunate.
I don't want to do that. That's not the story I want to write. And that happened with the next 2 editors I had as well. One of whom who just literally didn't want to know me. Like, one of the most
so bizarre. I feel like basically stalked you.
Well, that editor in question inherited me.
Right. It was like passed off, and
yeah, literally,
and I just felt passed around. And
I was what is referred to in publishing as an orphan. And I had one of the most unpleasant lunches meeting this editor, myself, my literary agent, and this editor, and it was horrible. It was just ghastly.
Yeah.
It was like, wow, you don't give a rat's ass, you know? So, yeah.
Well, I know you're busy with scripts and comics and other things, but I'm still not giving up on your prose career.
I know. Look, there are 2-3 novels
now that
I
you
still
know
want to write.
who you are now, and would be able to say next new editor, right? You mean, you're a different person, and so yes. Well, that's great to know. We've talked about these potential novels, and so I will continue to occasionally inquire. But speaking of,
I've got at least 2 I want to write. So
good.
It's just a question of when.
Yeah, and that's fine. That's fine. Take your time. No rush. Get through Lazarus first. As Spencer and I was going to text you the day we spoke and said, were your ears ringing, Greg? Because, you know,
I am, I've been, because I listened, of course, to the podcast, and so my first question was, do I admit I've heard this? And then the second was, what am I gonna say to Mimi when I talk to her? And say that is one of the most flattering, and you guys had me laughing out loud at a couple of points as I was listening to it.
Okay.
But I am yeah, I just that was incredibly flattering.
Well, we didn't do it to flatter you. We just speak truth.
Sure. I that's why it's flattering.
I know. I was super excited. I was like, oh my gosh, I want to text Greg, but I want him to wait and hear the podcast. I didn't want to ruin it.
and having read Reign of Terror, you know, I mean, it's like
so heavy.
Thank God we are just all turning into a mutual admiration society here,
I know.
You know.
But isn't it nice?
It is heavy. It's an incredible week of work of journalism. I mean,
yes,
and analysis, and an important one.
Yes.
God almighty. I mean, it's literally one of those things where every single fucking senator and congressperson needs to read this.
Oh, right.
I mean, everybody.
I wish.
Everybody. Never mind, you know, everybody at the Pentagon needs to read this. You know, So yeah, I
Yes, keep writing Lazarus because you've got some major fans out there
all right, well,
who are
we
fellow writers and can really understand
one way or
what
another
it
it'll get
takes.
finished
Oh, I
one
know it
day.
will. I know it
So
will. I'm not worried about that. But I know we got to wrap up soon. But it was interesting because you had mentioned that, you like to talk things out. And one of the things in the book that she had also mentioned was this calling around thing, which was that when you do research for the book, you call around and you talk to people and they are thrilled about it usually. And I was
yeah.
curious as to some of the people you spoke to, because I will say I'm not allowed to say what yet, but I've actually been called upon to offer my advice for something, and it's just super exciting. And
Are
they're all
you
like,
NDA'd? Are you NDA'd?
I wasn't told to share, so I don't want to
All
share
right.
yet. But you'll be the first person I tell, obviously.
No,
But it was like,
it is.
oh, they're like, so sorry to bother you. I'm like, no, keep asking. This is the coolest thing.
Yeah.
So yeah. So do you find that as well?
I have only once had anybody sort of react, what? And that was actually researching the first issue of Black Magic. I filled the bag with a bunch of my books, and then I walked down to the Firehouse on Broadway here in Portland, and I just unannounced, literally walked in and was like, "Thunk, hi, I'm a writer. Here are my proofs. I'm wondering if somebody could tell me how you would put out, how you would respond to somebody who doused themselves in kerosene." And I suspect my response would have been friendlier if I had gone through proper channels.
Right. Maybe made an appointment to speak with someone.
Yeah, but honest to God, in my experience, it's absolutely true that if you approach with respect and with and with the transparency of your agenda, people are more than happy to engage. I mean, I've called this I've called the FBI. I've cold called the bureau office in Eugene, Oregon, saying, is there somebody I can talk to about, and they give you to the lowest ranking officer. Literally that's their job, is you get these calls.
Talk to this guy.
And that led to, me getting in touch with Jerry Henley, who was the primary advisor on the Atticus stuff for years and years and years and years and years and years. I have had the benefit of, I get a similar thing, called the DEA, and ended up, taking to lunch an agent who told me more about how confidential informants work and the nature of investigations than I had ever imagined. And, I love research. So
I know.
and if you're open to the research will always give you more story. It will always inform what you're working on. And that you may find yourself in a place where you have to go, well, what would really happen versus what is dramatically appropriate. But those are high class problems to have. But being willing to engage and say, yeah, I am working on a story about, I'm wondering if you can help me, or I was directed to you about. Almost every single time the response has been very positive. People always want to talk about what they do.
And they like to share. Yeah, they usually like to share, right? Especially if it's for something cool like a comic book.
Well, and this is why when people respond so negatively when they feel that they have been poorly portrayed or were approached under false pretenses, right?
Yeah.
Oh, if you're writing a story about the DEA agent who's actually, a coke snorting mass murderer, they're gonna be a little pissed off, right?
Yes.
But if you come in and you say, look, I'm just trying to figure out how this works, right?
Yeah.
My initial communications with Jerry Henley, he was very guarded because I was reaching out right after the Nancy Kerrigan, Tanya Harding stuff.
Yeah.
And bodyguard was a very dirty word. And once he understood that I wasn't writing that,
yeah,
right, I was actually trying to figure out how personal protection really worked for real. It absolutely opened up like a flower. So
nice. Well, lots of fun. So I'm doing rereads right now in a lot of comics because, I like to try to be prepared for podcasts. So I'm currently rereading Gotham Central.
Oh, are you?
Yes. And tomorrow I will be speaking to Mr. Ed Brubaker.
Oh, really?
Oh, really? Yes.
I am going to be very interested to hear that one. What are you and Ed going to be talking about?
Oh my goodness. Well, whatever I'd like to talk about, really. I think though, when I been back and forth a little bit in email, obviously he's been writing a lot of comics and stuff. So I read his Reckless, and which is great. And I think a new one's coming out soon. So I'm sure there's that. But I don't know. I mean, do you have a good question I should ask him since you've got such insight? You could always text it to me too, but yeah, I mean, this is it was kind of accidental. I talked to Matt about some stuff, getting him back on, and then he had always mentioned, you should talk to him. I'm like, yes, anytime. And so we did a little intro, and that was also very comical because Matt and Ed Brubaker. I mean, I'm like, I love that I am in this group email right now. This is hilarious.
Yeah, I'm not sure what question I would ask Ed. I really don't. And I will be very interested to hear how that goes.
Yes, I'm excited.
He's a delight.
Yes. Yeah. Well, he's had a busy year and a half. He's just writing and putting out all these great stories, pulp, and so it'll be fun to kind of talk about that. And my husband, as you know, loves crime stories and everything. Yes. So
I suspect you can spend an hour on Criminal alone.
Yeah. Yes. But I'm looking forward to that. And it's always fun to do rereads anyway. And I hadn't reread it in such a long time. So I'm like kind of in it and trying to wrap that up before tomorrow. Just not that we're going to be speaking about that necessarily only, but I like to have reference and just it gets me in the zone, just to
Central
be having you all in my
Central
voice.
Still stands up. It's funny. I was looking at it not too long ago, I think last year, and I believe it still stands on its merits. I don't think we ever wrote propaganda with that book. And I think it still stands up, which is kind of remarkable considering we are coming up on its 20th anniversary.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. It's kind of funny. And I'll say it, and, I'm sure he's not going to hear this episode. So because you'll air first, but my friend at Paper Asylum, the one that I always recommends books to me. And I'm like, which ones of, Brubaker? And he's like, well, let me just say, if you don't immediately say Gotham Central when you hear the word Brubaker or Rucka, then you're a complete idiot. But their writing combined is absolutely ridiculous, and it's like the ultimate tag team in comic history. And it's like, give mere mortal a chance, So I thought you would enjoy that quote. Like,
that's funny. I will say, I will say the collaboration with Ed is the comics collaboration that I measure all writing collaborations against.
Ooh. Tough bar.
I don't know if he thought it was that effortless.
I will ask him. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I mean, you may want to. Yeah. I will say, we would get on the phone for an hour or two, and we would break the issue, and we would divvy up the page sequences, and we would each go off and write our bits and stick them together.
Yeah.
And brush, run a coat of paint over, just smooth everything out. And yeah, I have no idea how it worked as well as it did or why it worked as well as it did, but it worked really well. So
excellent.
There you go.
Well, for those that haven't read it yet, this is a great time. It's the anniversary is coming up, but also, we'll be talking about it in the
year or two out.
And talking about the podcast. It's on mind. So, but in any case, it's always lovely to have our chats.
It is
and I actually
lovely to
had real
talk to you.
content for you today, like a real podcast host.
Oh, you make it seem like you don't. That's stop it. You are a real host. These are fun, and I enjoy them. I have to apologize. Apparently, somebody is running a vacuum cleaner above me right now.
Well, at least the floor is going to be clean.
Yeah, well, but not the ceiling. We will talk again soon.
We'll talk again soon. Happy belated to Jen.
Thank you. I will pass it on.
All right. That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Please subscribe and rate my podcast on your platform of choice and leave a review. You can become a patron of the show at patreon.com/SifuMimiChan to help keep this podcast going. Follow me and interact on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook.